OK， 谢谢。OK， 你做一个 introduction 可能要用英语的。
Hello, everyone. This is the third lecture in our series, and today our speaker is Christopher Hesse. Christopher Hesse graduated from the Prestige ETH and Harvard University Graduate School of Design, and he has his practice Christoph Hesse Architekten that won numerous international awards. Without further ado, let's welcome Christopher Hesse. Okay, now begin.
Okay, thank you very much. So, thanks for inviting me to give this lecture. I'm very happy to be with you, and it's a great honor for me to speak to you. I have prepared a lecture for you, but I'm also going to show you 2 videos. But let me introduce myself first to you. So my name is Christoph Hesse, and I'm running the office called Christoph Hesse Architekten. And the lecture is called Self-Determined Solution and Ecological Approach. We are a team of approximately 15 people. It's a young office, which is based in Korbach, in the central highlands of Germany. And we also have a small branch office in Berlin, the capital of Germany. Today I want to show you projects in my home region. It's a rural area, it's a countryside in the green center of Germany. So here you have an idea of the surroundings and the atmosphere of our landscape. And before I dive into the projects, I would like to show and share with you a video which has been made for an exhibition that we had recently at an architecture gallery called Aedes in Berlin. So let's check out the video first, which is an introduction of our office, and it gives you an overview of the projects that I'm going to show and share with you.
Welcome to Christoph Hesse Architekten, an architectural office based in Korbach and Berlin, Germany.
Can you see everything?
Yes, we can see everything.
It's perfect.
Atmosphere, community building, and permanence of architectural thinking. Our aim is to create places of identity, self-sufficiency, and solidarity. Architecture, people, and nature have become disconnected from each other more than ever in the past 25 years. More and more people have become passive consumers and are less in a position to actively contribute to designing their living environment. This particularly affects rural areas, specifically in communities that have historically been shaped by agriculture and craftsmanship. The harshness of living conditions made it necessary to lead a life of solidarity and holistic interaction with nature. In the exhibition Grounded, we show projects from Hochsauerland and Waldeck-Frankenberg in Northern Hesse, where, together with our clients, we re-establish the connection between the built, natural, and social environment. The realized buildings should prove that building in the countryside can be individual and at the same time down to earth, participative, and energetically forward-looking. Future-oriented visions are presented in 3 subject areas, all of which pursue the same goal. Decoupling becomes networking, and networking becomes connectivity. 1. Local networks of self-sufficient communities. How a self-sufficient house in Hochsauerland became the engine of a local network and made entire villages independent of the global energy market. 2. Collaborative urban development from the inside. how a process of communicative exchange led to a socially and functionally mixed city quarter in the small town of Koba in northern Hesse. Three, connectivity through places of identity. How to create communal and personal identity in rural areas through a regional visitor center, a private towerhouse, and the Zeelenort.
Okay, so this gave you an overview of the office and the structure of this lecture. And now I would like to dive with you into the three topics. As said before, the first topic is called Local Networks of Self-Sufficient Communities. Here I show three projects. The second subject is Collaborative Urban Development from the Inside, as well as three projects. And the last chapter is called Connectivity through Places of Identity. Let's start with the first one. Local networks of self-sufficient communities. Here you can see a more rural scale in the countryside of Sauerland, in the green center of Germany. You see one community village here and another community village here. And the question or the topic of this chapter is how a self-sufficient house became a catalyst to make entire villages independent of the global energy market. So I will not dive super into this project because I have a second video about this, so you get more detailed information in this video. But nevertheless, the most important part is this house here. It's called Villa F, which is a starting point, a kick-off point for a self-built local energy network. So the result of this project is that the house itself and the whole village became independent of the global energy market. The energy is based on biogas, natural biogas, based on waste, bio-waste. And in this process, as you might know, you produce energy, electricity, and by burning this biogas, you also produce a lot of heat, which is usually waste, but in order not to waste it, you direct it into the community. And there was so much power left that even the second community on this side was able to hook up to this network and has also become energy independent since this year. So I showed two more projects on the other side of this network, which is a little pavilion here, which was built for a community celebration, and green infrastructure facilities here at the right. But let's first start with this Villa F, and to go more into detail, I would like to share a video with you about this project.
One day, a client from a small village, Dithmaringhausen in Sauerland, Germany, walked into our office and said, "Christoph, I would like to have a round house." It turned out that the client had two reasons why he wanted his house to be round. First, when he was sitting down during the construction phase inside the circular walls of one of his biogas plants, he was fascinated by the fundamental effects of the space. Secondly, from an energy efficiency point of view, the surface volume proportion should be ideal. This was crucial because he planned to heat the house with the heat being produced by his bioenergy plant. He wanted to give an example to the whole village, how to heat locally, save the money, and to be eco-friendly at the same time. The house, which became company headquarters, was going to be the first link for the local heat grid. 3 years of local heating grid existence. Had you thought at that time we would manage it so good? Not at all. To be honest, I had been one of the most skeptical. I can still remember it. The topography of the surroundings, in particular the slope of the mountains, were echoed by the shape of the roof. In addition, the landscape was drawn into the building, forming lodges and balconies. The interaction between the inside and the outside is the key concept of the building, since it reflects the client's close relationship with the place where they live and work. The facade of the house is of particular interest. From time to time, the client brings stones from a nearby creek that he finds during his walks and mounts them onto the facade. This leads to a constant change of the external expression of the building. On the one hand, the house adapts itself to the environment, while on the other hand, it transforms the surroundings and the village in a unique way. The supply and disposal of the building is, due to the biogas system, self-sufficient, therefore off the grid. Meanwhile, through the exemplary ecological nature of this building, the whole village decided to connect to the local heating grid of the farm. There were 12 of us at the very beginning, and when it happened to work, the others joined us automatically, although they had rambled about it before. By becoming independent of the global market, energy costs were significantly reduced. Now we have saved about 150,000 fuel oil or even more. 500 tons of CO2 have been cut down. It means 20 lorries of CO2 that only in this small spot of 190 inhabitants were saved, all thanks to the local heating grid. We had an energy day in our village last year. There were hundreds of people visiting the plant and the headquarters to be informed about our heating grid. At the moment, there is a plan to expand the grid to the next village. They also want to gain profit from it and make something for the environment.
So this was an introduction and an overview of this project, and as I said before, or as it was mentioned in the video, the idea is that this house, this off-the-grid house, is a kind of role model for the whole community to be independent of the fossil global energy market. And after this house has been completed, the community was stimulated by this example to build their own heating network and be connected to this biogas plant. And meanwhile, as I said before, this village is independent of the global energy market. And the result is that the energy costs have been reduced by 50% and the CO2 emissions by 100%. Here you can see a section of the house itself. There are like administration and service spaces in the ground floor, and there is an apartment of the owner of this plant, of this biogas plant and energy network in the upper part. You can see the back of the house with a loggia, which is oriented to the landscape with a small pool. And you can see, as you saw in the film, that the client mounts from time to time, whenever he has time, stones from a nearby creek onto the facade. This is the favorite place of my client, his loggia with the pool, with his personal favorite temperature. And it's always hot because, as I said before, there's so much energy waste and left that he has constantly enough for warming up his pool. So I get the point. I guess the point is that, as you know, like renewable energy is endless. You just have to work with it and get it into the right way and into the network, into the system. This is a summary of this project. So the whole village doesn't need anymore 150,000 liters of heating oil, which equals 300,000 cubic meters of CO2, which is a volume of approximately 4,500 containers, with literally would have a length from Rotterdam to Amsterdam. So it's quite a bit. And the side effect, the huge side effect which is very convincing for the local community, is that each household saves approximately 2,500 euros per year. So meanwhile, there are other communities visiting this place and are trying to do something similar, not only based on biogas, but maybe also on wood or other renewable sources. So this brings me to the second project of this chapter. It's called Green Energy Facility. And it's kind of atmospheric and nice architecture, but at the end of the day, it's infrastructure. And for us, it was important to show the beauty of this green energy infrastructure to the people. So we designed a kind of information path, which you can use in order to see how the biomass is stored in different infrastructure buildings. This one is a linear silo. This one is a round silo where you can watch in here, and then you go to this kind of installation. And the other project, the third project, which is part of this chapter, is this pavilion, which I show in the next slide. So this was about making these green infrastructure visible and kind of making it to be experienced by the public in order to give them information if they want to do something similar like this. So now I guide you through these three elements. Before I show you the location. So now we are in the next village, which is Refrainhausen, and the green energy facility is on the right. So we have these three elements, the linear silo, and it's walkable. You can walk through these two walls, and then you pass by this round silo and you can watch inside. And then later you see this installation before you go to this info pavilion made out of straw. That's a view of the two walls with biomass on each side of it. Now you pass by the round silo, which contains biomass or water, it depends. You see the object in the landscape. It's made out of recycled concrete. And here you can see inside when it's almost empty. The third project of this category is called Straw Therm Pavilion. And it's actually a temporary pavilion which was built by the local community due to the occasion of the 750th anniversary of this village. And with this pavilion, the community celebrated, as in the other village has been done before, 2 years before, the independence of the global energy market. And it's basically a round building with approximately 12 meters diameter, and it's made out of straw bales, stacked just very simple on top of each other. And there's a water bassin in the center, and a roof, a textile roof made out of coffee bags, recycled coffee bags. And here again, the local community celebrates that they are regaining self-independency, since, you know, these villages are approximately in this area, as you see, 750 or 800 years old. And until the 1950s, these villages, these villages have been energy independent. Of course they have. You basically go into the woods, you cut a tree and you put it into your oven. But after the war, this period was over and people installed, let's say, oil heating or gas heating. So they had been dependent on the global energy market. And last year, they basically regained their energy independency, and this was the occasion to celebrate this. So we are here, point 5, and now I show you some more information about this pavilion. The pavilion is round, and it has a place for people to get inside, and during these 3-4 days of celebrations, many people came into this pavilion and received information about what the community has done so far. And it was quite successful because there's a huge difference. I mean, there could have been just a panel with information, but I tell you that I guess most of the people, they wouldn't have cared. But if you do a kind of atmosphere architecture and you bring people into something and you generate a discussion among the people, you can be sure that people will listen to you, and especially the young generation was very open for this. So before all of these things has been done with my office and the local community in the place itself, we have been doing this project literally in 1 day. Of course, there has been some preparation, but at the end of the day, it's a quite simple project made out of straw balls, which are a metaphor for biomass, and the hot water in the center in this bassin represents the energy which is generated out of this biomass, which is a metaphor. So here you see the setting, the 2 walls, the first silo that I showed you, and this is the pavilion. It does not exist anymore, but it was because it was temporary for a few days. This is the situation in the landscape. And so it was a very prominent, let's say, object next to this main road. So many people came from this main road and visited the space and went inside to get some information. This is a view of the inside. So you have this straw, which represents the biomass, and the hot water, which is generated, the energy which is generated out of this biomass. And many people and kids and different generations came to visit this place and had a lot of fun and discussed and talked about this issue of renewable energies on a regional and neighborhood level. Great. So now I would like to dive into the second chapter called Collaborative Urban Development from the Inside. I'm going to show 3 projects. The first one is called Vitos. The second one is a community house, and the third one is called Climate Garden Pavilion. That's an aerial, and the main point is how a process of communicative exchange led to a socially and functionally mixed neighborhood in a small town called Korbach, the place where we are based. Actually, right now I'm sitting here. Can you see? That's our atelier. And over the last few years, we had the chance to have our construction sites close by, very close by. So we built this project, which I show you right now. That's another project, and then these 3 little pavilions, and this residential project for disabled people. And I also show you this project, which is this community house, and this little pavilion number 5 at the end. Let me start with this one, which is called Vitos. Actually, there is an interesting story about this. Because originally, since there are commercial spaces down here in the basement, there are no parking garages for this project. So someone asked me, could you design parking garage on this side of the street? And we said, well, yes, we can do, but we are not really happy with designing just a parking garage. So what about putting 2 levels of extra space on top of these parking garages? Since at that time, they had like 2-3 years ago, we had this refugee crisis. And so there was space needed for a so-called outpatient psychiatric clinic for refugees. And so we were able to offer extra space for kids and young adults with traumata. And this was very important at that time, and we were able to offer this space. So that's a project, and it was basically possible due to cantilevering parts on top of these garages. So we have 2 extra spaces for this medical space. It looks like this. There have been quite a bit of obstacles. Originally, everyone said it's impossible to build on this narrow piece of land because here's a street, there are the tracks, there are some important electricity wires and so on. But nevertheless, it worked, and it's an interesting piece of the urban neighborhood. And that's the view. Sorry, that's the view from the back. And there are many things going on, like playing and drawing and painting and treatment with the kids to bring them back into a kind of normal life situation. Yeah, let me come to the next project. It's called Community House am Hauptbahnhof. Just to give you an orientation, so we are now right here, and the main idea of this project is to generate affordable housing, so affordable apartments which are subsidized by different uses, not directly commercial, but let's say more service oriented. And so we were able to have in the city center many different income groups in order to have a mixed, socially and functionally mixed neighborhood, with a lot of open spaces in order to stimulate communication among the people themselves and the dialogue between the building and this open space, which you can see in this perspective. So all of these balconies are there in order to stimulate the communication and to have it open to society. Well, actually, sometimes people are wondering, when I'm in my Berlin office, they say something like this would never be possible in Berlin because you literally would, your investor would say, why didn't you put another apartment here, here, and here, so, and here, and here, and here? But we are convinced that these open spaces are very important for the dialogue between a building and the open space, and it's much more sustainable in the end of the day. Something wrong? Can you hear me?
Yeah,
it's okay. It's illusion. Forget it.
Actually, the Zoom has a 40 minutes limitation.
Okay.
The wave limitation in the advertisement, but it might be get corrected.
Okay.
But we'll reopen it if it happens. Okay.
But it's okay. I guess I'm done soon.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So here you can see that the community, the local community, was very much involved into this process of developing this project, and that there are these photos of the construction site. Meanwhile, it's almost done. We are just finishing the last few parts in the ground floor. Okay, the last project of this category is called Climate Garden Pavilion. And it has a lot to do with green energy, and it's basically, let's say, a meter or a showcase to demonstrate that currently 80% of the electricity of our small town called Korbach is generated with wind turbines, hydropower, biogas, and photovoltaics. The average in Germany is good, but however, it's only 45%, so we are beyond that. And in order to show this, we have these 3 wires with stones, and these wires are connected to a hammock, which brings you into balance. So it's a kind of metaphor. And to have totally balance, you need actually 100% of green energy. And that's basically the aim, or this should be the aim of my city here, and in fact the aim of the country, and maybe even the whole world. So it's a kind of pavilion which also makes you feel good and makes you think. So we are here, number 5, and this is a section. So you see that we changed it. It's an existing building, it's an old stable. We took off the roof, which was leaking. Here you can see that we took off the roof, and instead of replacing the roof, we just installed a concrete wall perimeter and opened the building up to the sky. And so this has been done with the local community, so on a sensitive way, about the renewable energy sources that we are having in this area. Okay, you can still see everything? You see everything? Yeah. So the last chapter is called Connectivity Through Places of Identity. Can you hear me?
Yes, no problem, no problem.
Okay, great, sorry. I was just missing this green frame. Okay, the last chapter is called Connectivity Through Places of Identity. And here I would like to show 2 projects, actually 3, but it's two groups, about places of identity, which should have the aim to create communal and personal identity areas. Let me start with the visitor center. It's a competition that we won recently. It was a several stage nightmare competition, but we were lucky to do it. And actually, I guess the idea was so simple that they took us. There is this community, it's an area close by, so we are in this city called Korbach, and Lake Edersee is here. You remember from Ways of Life, so Ways of Life is here, and here next to this dam, the community, the local community is planning to have a visitor center. And this visitor center should show the history, the important history of this place, because this dam and the lake changed the whole region and transformed it dramatically. In order to show this history, there is this visitor center, and the idea is basically, literally we kind of took out a section out of this dam and used this as the main element of the visitor center. So to make this monument kind of visible and open to the people, since the wall itself is not public because it's highly protected. It's a national monument owned by Germany. So this is a section. You basically enter through this open space into this information part of the building, and then you go down and have a big space for a very nice video installation and art exhibition, which is done by artists. You can see a section model which nicely shows the ideas that we have to basically metaphorically echo a section through the dam of Lake Edersee. And this is how this section looks from far away. So we hope to catch some light, maybe not that dramatic, but to show the atmosphere as you would basically be inside of the dam. And by this way, we also create a huge public space, because every year there are between 2.5 and 3.5 million people visiting this space. Okay, the last project that I'm going to show you is made out of two small buildings, and these buildings are called Seelenorte. It's not easy to translate. I guess there would be a nice Chinese word for this, but I don't know Chinese. So let's call it a place of soul or soul place. And, you know, in these days, it's interesting to see, although many people are kind of losing the connection and not seeing so much importance in religion anymore, there is there's a big growing desire for spiritual experience. So this place is called Seelenorte, since it's embedded into this so-called Sauerland Seelenorte, Sauerland soul places. And there are many places of this which are more natural, and some are architectural. And I'm basically, or we are responsible for the architectural part of this Sauerland Seelenorte. So these are places where people can hike, where they calm down, where they enjoy the silence, and where they are inspired, and where they gain new insights. And two of these Seelenorte are in this position. One is called Seelenort Deifeld and one is called Seelenort Rifflinghausen. And the first one in Deifeld, it's super small. It's basically a basis made out of recycled concrete with a wooden lounger and a tent-like roof structure, which represents the main and most important object of this village, the symbol of this village. It's a sword out of bronze, from the Bronze Age to 1,400 years before Christ. And this tip basically represents this element, which is not in this place anymore. It's in a famous museum, but for the local community, it's in the public memory, in the collective memory of this community. So you basically walk in, and then here you can see how it looks like in the surrounding. And this Seelenort is in direct communication, in direct connection with the other Seelenort in the village, where basically the other community creates this Seelenort, a place of soul, out of recycled concrete. And here the idea is to dive into the structure, but not seeing into the landscape directly. You basically are directed around the corner, and then you take place here in this sheltered area from where you have a view into the landscape and the connection to the other Seelenort. As you can see in this elevation. And finally in this photo, in this photo montage, which is connected to the other Seelenort and to the village. And the current status of this project is that we generated the material for this due to demolition of existing old buildings. And these recycled materials will be formed into the Seelenort, and the form will be done by the local community, and everyone will bring bits and pieces in order to make a print into this building, which then basically serves also as a collective memory in a moment of history where maybe many things are crazy, and maybe some things have to calm down and be more relaxed and silent. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Chris, for your lecture. And should we switch to the, okay. Should we stop sharing like the photos? Or? Okay, good. Yes, now it's the question time. And I have my 1 million question for you. So how do you define the relationship between infrastructure and architecture?
Is this like, do you want to refer to a specific project like the first one?
Like a few projects that you dealt with infrastructure in a very minimal way, because unexpected way actually, because you're using like small projects to deal with infrastructure, which is very strategic and you know, acupuncture kind of way of revolutionize the whole village, and how people experiment infrastructure in a very poetic way. So I'm wondering, how do you define it? You definitely give a new definition for it.
Yeah, since you know, when we come back to this local network, this local heating network in these little villages, on the first glance, it sounds not very unique or new, but it is new, or it is unique, since it's not top down, it's bottom up. And since we have built this Villa F as a kind of icebreaker, a role model for this community, everyone was kind of convinced if they do something similar, it could help them a lot. Not only because of, let's say, ecological interests, but also of facts, hard facts like economical interests. And if you're able to bring things together and they save money, then you can really do a lot. And there is a certain amount of anarchy in this project. So sometimes people just do it. They come together and say, sorry, but I have to go through your back garden or in your front garden, or we have to cross this street and that street. I know it sounds kind of strange and like almost, as I said, anarchy-like, but maybe that's a certain approach, a certain way of lifestyle, a certain way of dealing with things in a more relaxed and bottom-up approach. So that's unique about this project. Just do it. And this has to basically export it or import it from the countryside into the main cities, because the resources and the possibilities are much bigger in the cities. I know that there might be some obstacles like law and whatnot, but I think if everyone gains, especially economically, then it's a powerful tool to change things and to make them more sustainable.
So like is all Cobra or Germany turned ecological? Because I know that at the time when we were at school, and there's a lot of effort put into the ecological planning for European cities. Can you tell us more about that? Like, how does the ecological approach change cities and villages from urban scale to architecture scale to like detail scale?
Well, actually, I guess, yes, Germany is doing a good job, and Europe as well, over the course of the last 10 years. And it changed a lot since, as you know, from last year and the Friday for Futures generation, or everyone knows, of course, that we are in a climate crisis, and we have to change the energy supply from fossil fuels to renewable energy. And but the problem is that these processes take quite a while, and so many things come together. And in Germany, we also basically are on the best way to switch off all nuclear power plants since Fukushima. So there are so many things happening at the same time, and so I guess we don't have the time. We have to hurry up, no doubt, and the country is doing a good job, but not all details are running smoothly. But nevertheless, we don't want to complain, since I believe that on the one hand, of course, it has to be directed by the country and the federal states, but on the other hand, a huge amount of impact can come from the local communities. And maybe that's a good way in order to push this from currently, I think it's like 45% green energy in Germany to almost 80 or maybe 100% in the future. So I guess the point is, yes, they are on a good way, they do a good job, but it has to be faster and it has to be globally.
Right. Yeah. I was amazed at how you bridge, the sustainability, the technology side with bridge that side with, more artistic expression, concrete, sculptural, spatial. I think you have done very well in terms of balancing the two sides. You're not doing, very, scientific side of that kind of architecture, but in a very more emotional way. I really appreciate that. I'm wondering also I'm very amazed by how how your team embedded in local area. But I know you have office in Berlin, but also you have established a lot of work based on local area, which is really determined by the, in my understanding, really based on the social development level. Which means people of your team very happily work in rural area. That's kind of rural area, right?
Yeah.
I think that's for us is kind of difficult because if we work in rural area, we have huge difficulty in terms of life. In China, there are huge gap between urban and suburban, rural area. There are a couple architects in China now. They're doing very well, but they had to sacrifice their working environment or personal life, or their children's educations to do that kind of construction or design. I think there's a difference in between, but there's a lot of inspiration in your works. Also, I'm really interested in your construction or material expression, which in your work there are a lot of work done by concrete. I think my question is that aesthetic choice or price, or the construction, the constructability of the local local contractor. What in terms of which is the aspect you when you look at the material choices?
Yeah, thanks for your comment and your question. So maybe responding to your first point, well, actually, you're right. Maybe it's kind of, it sounds unusual from someone from outside, but for us, it's kind of everyday work to work with the local community, and that's something normal. Because if you don't do it like this, you won't do a lot, because people they don't understand when you come as an architect and say, this is my idea, this is my gesture, take it or leave it. They would not take it. They would say, who are you? What do you think who you are? And just work with us. And that's very refreshing. And that's very, as I showed also in this introduction video, it's deeply embedded into rural communities. That they basically do the things on their own, and they at least want to be part of the process. And this usually leads to very interesting projects where you sometimes at the end of the day can't really say who is the author, and actually it doesn't really matter. You know, the result and the aim, the common aim matters. And nowadays, like, it feels like we are rushing from one crisis to another crisis. So now, right now we have a health crisis, the Corona crisis, which is very, very sad. But we also have a housing crisis. And so it's not really affordable to live in big cities like Frankfurt or Berlin right now. And people have to take what they get. They pay a lot of rent. They are not able to buy a house, buy a home. And many people are really sick of these conditions. They don't want to be out of this game. They want to be part of the possibility to create, or at least to be part of the creation of their own living environments. That's deeply embedded, I guess, into human behavior, not only in rural areas, but also in the urban environment. So I guess that's a key figure we have to take care of in the future as architects, rural or urban. And coming back to your question about material, yeah, I guess it has a lot to do with this roughness or directly manner of treating things in the countryside. So yeah, if it makes sense, like in a certain typology or form, like the silo, there is no question about doing it in other materials than concrete. Or if you want to create something which lasts maybe, I don't know, 100 years or whatnot, like the Seelenort, and you speak to the local community and you say, why don't we take a material which is very strong and tough and durable, and we have this material from a recycled project, then it's quite convincing to use this material. But in other cases, like this round house, it's made out of bricks and just plaster, and from time to time the client stacks or mounts these natural stones from a nearby creek onto the facade. So I guess my point is, each project has its own story, its own soul, and its own materiality. So we cannot really say that we have a certain range of materialization. It all depends on the client and the circumstances, the budget, and it has to do a lot with sustainability. And of course, I know that on the first glance, it sounds that concrete is not very sustainable, but it always depends on how the concrete is made, where the energy is from, and if the energy is green, like big parts of this material are still okay, since it also has a long duration, and that also is it's important when we speak about sustainability.
同学们有没有问题？
And what about the architectonic? I noticed that you actually have a great emphasis on architectonic and the plasticity of architectonic in your architecture primary intervention. So can you talk more about it? Like for several projects, you're like architectonic, like the first move is correct and that's it. And the project is successful from there on.
You mean how we generate the forms of our projects?
Yeah, in a way.
Well,
what about in and outs of the volume, the architectonic,
Yeah. Well, actually, it's always, as you, I guess, doing your own work as well, but it's always this, the spirit of the place, the genius loci, or genius loci. So you feel something, you respond to the place, you have an idea, and you have the impact of the users and the local communities and the people in and around this place. So these are the forces which shape our buildings. And beyond that, of course, there's always a conceptual layer, which we know from, I don't know, from university or what we teach at university. But to be honest with you, it's always important to have a strong concept, a strong form, a strong idea. But if you dive deeper and you really fulfill the demands of the spirit of the place, if you feel it, and especially the longings and desires of the people, then it starts to be a good project. And that's something we always try to incorporate into our projects.
I also realized that, you know, since I visited your place, and you really admire the tremendous landscape, the beautiful landscape. And each of your project has an, you know, architecture attitude towards landscape. So how does your architecture measure the landscape of your area?
Well, actually, yes, that's a good point, because half of our projects are always basically shaped or stimulated or influenced by the surrounding landscape. And in case of Villa F, we literally try to pull in the landscape into the building and at the same time open the building to the landscape in very distinct ways and points and situations. Or the roof, as you remember, the roof is basically has a slope like this and a slope like this, which is an echo of the surrounding topography. So there are always these kind of underlying ideas which are drawn or stimulated by the surrounding, the topography, the material, the atmosphere, not always only let's say natural topography, but also sometimes urban topography or infrastructure topography, like this dam. We basically, as you saw, we just took a section out of this dam and used it as our main element for this visitor center with museum.
Let's see, any more questions from the students?
I have a question. In the first project, the local people will bring the rock they found, bring the stone they found, and put them in the facade. So is this automatically happen action, or it is in the first design of the architecture?
It's a good question, actually, and because it's exactly what I was saying, which is important for us. So yes, we wanted to have a kind of natural stone facade, but we didn't really know in the beginning how it would look like. And then by, let's say, testing or coincident, we saw, oh, why don't we take this stone and it's just like 50 meters away, and we just take it out of a nearby creek and try to see how it looks like. And so we tested the first part, as you can see here. And meanwhile, whenever the client has time and needs to relax a little bit, he continues to work on his facade. But yeah, you're right. It was not planned in the beginning. It was developed over the time. And sometimes it's good to take this time because good things need time.
So one more question. How do you balance all the constituencies from the community? Like each project are strongly influenced by the community. How do you, deal with them?
Well, of course, it's we are, as architects in the school, we are not really trained to do this. We are not trained as urban planners to do this, but I guess it's very important to be able to do and to listen to people and to translate their wishes and to understand their wishes. Since sometimes these participation processes are almost like empty tools. They are just have been done because people think they have to be done. But to be honest, if you take them really serious, then you can get a lot out of it. And don't worry that they destroy the design. It's a curve like this. It goes up and down. But at the end of the day, I would say that a project always is stronger, much stronger, when you incorporate the community, as it would be if you totally do it on your own. I guess this is it's a traditional way of the last century, where you as an architect sit down in your atelier and you do your beautiful things, and you think that it's wonderful for your community, but in fact, only which is basically done by all people will be points of identity and will be accepted by the local community.
Okay, more questions? Deng Zhichao?
Okay, thank you for your lecture. And I noticed that you also got an office in Berlin. So I want to know what the differences between your design, like in a big city, or with the design you made in the rural spaces. Like, what the difference in your attitude or in your method of intervention, like that?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, actually, the office in Berlin we have since 1 year. So right now we most of our projects are still in this area where I have my main office. But we have quite a nice project in Berlin and also in a city called Potsdam, which is close by. And yeah, what's the difference? Well, actually, the difference is that we are not so free anymore. It's a little bit annoying that currently the urban development and particular the housing market is extremely investor driven. There's nothing wrong with investors, not at all. But to be honest, I'm wondering why every single square meter has to be built, and everything is so dense, and everything is so money driven, that I think at the end of the day, this way can't be sustainable. It's not only a luxury to leave open space, as I showed you in this community housing with these huge balconies. I think it's much more sustainable at the end of the day to leave things open for the communication between the private and the public space. I know that it's important to have a certain degree of density, no doubt, but at the same time, it's important to not neglect the dialogue between the private and the open space, and to create public space as well.
Good. Zhu Xiangfeng.
Thank you.
Zhu Xiangfeng. Shen Zhongyu.
Well, thank you for your brilliant lecture, and it actually reminds me of my winter practice last year in Fujian in China, and it's an activity, and we had a team made up of our Tsinghua students, and we went there to do some architecture practice for the rural villages. And also we face some challenges. You know that as students, our time was limited just in the vacation. So on different vacations, different teams will go there and do different architecture work for the rural area. And so I'm wondering, like in your first program, how do you manage or organize the timeline for your whole program, like from the Villa F to the silo, and also the expansion of the local heating network? And how do you organize the timeline from the beginning?
Yeah, it's a good question, because it's not so easy to organize a timeline, and this has a lot to do with this bottom-up approach, because sometimes you know, there is this word or the saying from Africa when they say to Europe, you have the watches, we have the time. And sometimes things are going smoothly and there is not even a timeline, but they still work. So I guess between the first step of this grid in this first village and the extension into the other village was something like 3 years. And the reason for this time is that things have to be done fast, yes, but they also have to be accepted if you want to think holistic. And these these processes need time. And since in Germany everything has to be agreed by different offices or different administrations, and of course a local community. And so these processes are sometimes, they feel very small, very slow, but if you compare it to other infrastructure buildings, it's kind of okay. I guess in China you would be much faster.
Thank you.
Okay, any more questions? Oh, okay. So thank you, Chris, for your lecture. It's a wonderful lecture, wonderful work. I'm so glad to hear that your Berlin office is booming. Okay.
So guys, thank you very much for listening, and have a nice day in China. See you. Goodbye. See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.